Watch this.
The days of Durst are done. West Bonner County School District officially ended Brandon Durst's term as superintendent. He didn't say much about it, but he didn't leave without sharing his greatest accomplishment. Another months-long saga coming to a likely conclusion. Former City Council member Lisa Sanchez and her battle to get her seat back. Today, we learn how many figures this legal fight cost the city and why it may not be over.
It's always a great conduit to teach people about history and also a haunting.
There's always a good story in a theater, and there always seems to be more than actors treading the boards here at the Boise Little Theater. Stop 2 on our Haunted Boise tour.
Again, just appreciate the opportunity, and thanks again to all my staff for the great work you're doing.
Well, those weren't the last words spoken by Brandon Durst on his last day as superintendent of the West Bonner County School District. But after scouring the last night's 3.5-hour-plus meeting, those might have been as close to a goodbye as the North Idaho community got from Mr. Durst. A meeting, by the way, he didn't bother to attend in person, but chose to drop in via a video feed. So the former Democratic state senator, the former Idaho Freedom Foundation staffer, the former candidate for state superintendent, is now the former West Bonner County superintendent after 3 tumultuous months, a little more than 3 months, actually. Quick recap. Back in June, the board picked Durst to run the district for $105,000 a year, despite not having the endorsement of the State Board of Education, despite not being qualified to earn that endorsement, and with the understanding Durst would get a State Board Emergency Provisional Certificate. Well, that didn't happen. After an August recall election ousted 2 trustees, both of whom backed Brandon, the Idaho State Board of Education came to the conclusion it didn't have the power to grant such an emergency provisional certificate for administrators, leaving Durst unqualified and leaving the district subject to losing funding since, well, the state wouldn't pay his salary without that certification. Well, then 2 weeks later, on September 25th, Durst announced his resignation, saying his situation was marked by relentless obstacles thrown his way by those who wished to see him fail. He left his final day up to the board, but since September, the West Bonner County School Board has had to cancel or postpone 7 of their 10 scheduled meetings. A couple of those because of legal reasons, waiting for confirmation of that recall election, and several more because one of the remaining trustees, that'd be Troy Reinbold, just couldn't make it to the meetings, and they needed all 3 of them to be there for a quorum. So that finally happened last night. About 2.5 hours into that meeting, the board went into executive session to accept what everyone assumed was Durst's resignation, effective today. Then after another executive session, the board returned to say this.
I make a motion to appoint Joe Krinn as the temporary interim Idaho certified and qualified superintendent for West Bonner County School District with a 90-day contract.
And the vote was unanimous. Did you catch that in the motion? What was said in that motion? Idaho certified and qualified superintendent. Okay, so who is Joe Krinn? Well, he's the former principal of West Bonner's Lamana High School in Priest River. He retired in the spring of 2020 after 34 years as an educator. But back in 2016, he was actually named Idaho Association of School Administrators Superintendent of the Year when he worked for the St. Mary's School District. Then in May of 2021, in the midst of retirement, Krinn was named a member of Janice McGeehan's Indoctrination Task Force, or the task force to examine indoctrination in Idaho education. This was back when McGeehan was Idaho's lieutenant governor, and she was also running for governor. McGeehan tasked this task force with rooting out alleged teachings on social justice, critical race theory, socialism, communism, and Marxism from public schools. A task force that also included the likes of Anna Miller from the Idaho Freedom Foundation, Boise State professor Scott Yenner, he of the medicated, meddlesome, and quarrelsome fiasco, and Ryan Spoon, recently named leadership of Ada County's Republican Central Committee. A task force, by the way, that didn't root out anything, but did get McGeehan sued for not releasing public records and her asking taxpayers to pay for said lawsuit, which was denied by JFAC. Anyway, that's who is now in charge in West Bonner County, Joe Krinn. Other than that brief appreciate the opportunity during last night's meeting, Durst didn't walk away without saying, or did walk away. No, he didn't. He did walk away, but he did say a bit more with this last night, late night tweet. Probably the thing I'm the most proud of in the last 4 months is getting the most conservative, comprehensive, and legally defensible gender bathroom and facilities policy in the state adopted. A policy that I personally wrote prior to starting as superintendent. Did you personally write that? Also, your one-page policy, which passed in August, is more comprehensive and more legally defensible than the three-page law passed by the Idaho legislature back in March, which is currently being legally defended. Sort of. We're going to have more on that in a moment. We did reach out to Brandon Durst today to ask him about his truncated turn as school administrator and this claim of his proudest moment, but we've yet to hear back. But Brandon let it be known, improvement in academics, fixing the budget, updating school facilities, those are not at the top of his list of accomplishments, probably because, well, those didn't happen. But an unnecessary policy of telling people where they can pee, that's what he wants his legacy to be. Okay, so back to Idaho's bathroom ban, otherwise known as Senate Bill 1100. Apparently it's blocked again. This law, signed by the governor back in March, would require public schools to maintain 2 separate bathrooms, locker rooms, overnight accommodations based on a student's gender assigned at birth, meaning no transgender students allowed in bathrooms or locker rooms coinciding with the gender with which they identify. And that law, it went into effect July 1st. Then a week later, a lawsuit was filed to stop it, claiming it violated equal protection and due process clauses of the Constitution. A temporary restraining order was granted in August, but that went away about 2 weeks ago when a federal judge denied a request for a preliminary injunction, which would have put a pause on this law's enforcement until the lawsuit is settled. Judge David Nye said in his ruling, neither side could prove anyone was harmed by this law. But then today, that decision was kind of overruled. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals once again put a temporary block on the law's enforcement after attorneys with Lambda Legal appealed Judge Nye's decision. So I guess schools, more than 2 months into the school year, don't have to enforce this law again, unless, of course, that school district went ahead and made their own rules. The saga of Lisa Sanchez versus the city of Boise may have come to a close after months of finger-pointing and an official lawsuit, but now we're getting an idea of what the legal wrangling will cost taxpayers. Sanchez is a name Boise voters have seen on their ballot since 2017, winning her last election for city council in 2021 with 57% of the vote. However, Sanchez lost her seat on the council in January of this year after a combination of redistricting and her moving meant she was no longer living within the district she's supposed to represent. Sanchez has maintained she was unaware she moved outside of the area and even claimed she checked with the city to make sure she did not, which is why she eventually sued the city of Boise back in April. So we learned this week how much the city has paid to defend that lawsuit so far, which is more than $100,000. That's the number right now. So the question to you, Joe, or a couple of them, is this a big number and could it go higher?
It is possible it could go higher, Brian. And again, following the loss of her seat, Sanchez filed a lawsuit against the city of Boise claiming that she had inadvertently moved out of the district and the city had no legal authority to remove her. Sanchez wrote on social media in August that she will not be running for re-election to Boise City Council. In her post, Sanchez mentioned that she couldn't run for council while employed at a new job. And according to a press release, Sanchez now works for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Federal Hatch Act. It prevents federal employees from being elected to municipal office. So that's that. But this week, we actually learned that the city of Boise, they approved a budget item to increase funding to defend the case up to $149,000. That's an increase from $99,000, and that was originally set aside. But as you can see here on the document, to this point, the city tells me this afternoon they've spent about $106,000. And court records indicate that the case filed by Sanchez is now dismissed with prejudice, meaning can't just be refiled. So the city clearly has room, though, for more legal expenses in the budget. Again, basically up to $150,000. So yes, taxpayer dollars are what we're talking about here. And the city tells me that there is a specific budget line for outside attorney fees in the legal budget for the city. Comes out of the general fund there. And the city attorneys, they did not do this case specifically because they want to avoid a conflict of interest. The court did not rule, though, that Sanchez needed to cover any legal fees. So that is the final word on the case for now. Again, at least $106,000 used to defend the city from the Sanchez suit over the loss of her seat. And Brian, in terms of context, we're going to work to put that expense into context here on the 208. I know people are curious. Is this $100,000 payout? Is this a lot for a year or a lot for a case? So some of the records that we need to fully tell this story, we'll circle back to.
Because I'm sure that's the question. It's like $100,000, 6 figures, could be a big chunk of change for a lot of people. But in the grand scheme of things, how does that play out?
Yeah, stay tuned to the 208.
Thanks, Joe. All right, well, there is a bit more going on around the 208, of course, per usual. And here's Hector Mendoza, that is, with your 411.
Brian Koberger, The man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students last November was back in court this afternoon. These hearings were originally supposed to happen last month, but they were pushed to this week due to illness. The first hearing was earlier this afternoon. It was sealed and closed to the public. Court records show the court took up Kohberger's motion to dismiss the grand jury indictment on grounds of biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct in withholding exculpatory evidence. The second hearing takes up his motion to dismiss on grounds of error in grand jury instructions. Sebastian Robertson with our sister station in Seattle is there. He'll tell us the details coming up on the news at 6. Want to have a say in how the new zoning code is implemented? The city is hosting outreach meetings on just that. The modern zoning code is set to go into effect on December 1st, so before that, you can go to the meetings from November 6th to the 29th at different library locations. The first one is on November 6th from 5 to 6 p.m. at Library at Colin Ustick in the Sagebrush Room. You can see other dates and locations on your screen now, so head to the City of Boise's website to register. And a quick reminder, tomorrow is the last day to request your absentee ballot if you're planning to vote in the upcoming election. You can do that by visiting voteidaho.org. You do need to already be registered to vote in Idaho to request an absentee ballot, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. And that's the 401 on the 208. I'm Hector Mendoza.
Okay, just a heads up, we rely on your questions and comments to continue the conversation here on the 208, but we're having a little trouble with our text machine right now. So if you normally text us in or text in to that number on your screen, let's go with the email today. If you can do that, that is the208@ktvb.com. All right, having been around for about 160 years or so, the city of Boise has proven itself as a pretty nice place to live. And based on a few stories we've been learning lately, it's also a pretty nice place to stay after you live. Yesterday, we learned about the ghosts that may be roaming the grounds of the old Fort Boise Military Cemetery. Today, in day 2 of our Haunted Boise series, we're staying in the Fort Boise area, but going inside. The Boise Little Theater in Boise's North End has occupied its round-roofed building since the 1950s, but it wasn't always there. And apparently, those haunting there now are holdovers from its previous location. Photojournalist Kevin Esslinger, with the help of Haunted Boise co-author Mark Iverson, tells us the tale.
It's always a great conduit to teach people about history and also a haunting. We are at the second Boise Little Theater. This was built in 1957. It replaced a previous theater that was out at Gowan Field. May 16th, 1956, during a packed house play, smoke started billowing out from underneath the curtain. They ended the play, obviously, and ushered everybody out. George McKean had gone on stage to try and save his wife, who he thought was backstage. She wasn't. She got out safely. Justice Craycroft actually went to save some furs that the troupe had rented from a shop downtown, and he wanted to save those and return them. They were both found later, and they had suffocated, unfortunately. Those are two casualties of the fire at the first Playhouse. Not even a year later, the community at large donated $75,000 plus to the establishment and construction of a new theater, built this very unique building. Some of the reports involve two men that haunt the theater, sometimes the lobby, but especially the wardrobe room and the breezeway between, I believe, the theater space, the stage, and the wardrobe room. People who were members of the acting troupe have said that this has been witnessed, a face that'll look out this little window onto the breezeway, that whatever is in there likes to speak up. Another mention of activity is the lights come on and off in the theater, unexplained noises. During the 1990s, one of the directors of the theater basically said that he was here and he was editing a script and revising some things, and he was in the theater all by himself, and he heard footsteps across the stage. He was looking right at the stage. He basically said that it really scared him, and he left and wouldn't be in the building by himself after dark. Woman in the front lobby area and the box office that said to haunt there. One of the reports is that you'll hear things when you're in the box office room. One woman had a dog that just started going haywire and looking out into the lobby area. As she opened the door, the dog just got more agitated and barking at something that wasn't there, and so she left right away. Whenever we have a really unique experience, we just want to tell people unusual, strange, unique things that happen to us. And it doesn't get any stranger than an unexplainable supernatural activity. I know I'd share it.
It's a pretty cool place. I've been in there several times, have not experienced that. But do you want more haunted history? Check out Mark's book, or stick around. We're gonna have part 3 of our series on Monday. We're gonna take you to the Idaho Hotel. You've probably heard of that one. Multiple horrors have happened there. And we're gonna tell you about a couple of them.
All right, beautiful shot from the top of Tamarack Resort. This is a live look at 7,700 feet looking out over Lake Cascade. A really wintry scene, even though we're only about a month into the fall season. And unlike yesterday, we are not seeing rain pouring down here in Boise. Instead, we have some sunshine breaking through the clouds. It's chilly, though. We're only at 49 degrees in the City of Trees with a light westerly wind. The wind has been much stronger out in the Magic Valley, where wind chills or feels like temperatures have been in the low 30s throughout the day. All of this courtesy of that system that came through yesterday, still triggering some light snow over Idaho Falls. We have cleared out for the most part as far as precipitation goes, though we do have some clouds still lingering. But as the clouds clear out tonight and temperatures continue to drop, we will be cold enough that we have a freeze warning in effect from midnight tonight for the Treasure Valley until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning for our first widespread freeze of the season. Almost all of the Treasure Valley is expected to dip below freezing tomorrow. These are the highs for our Friday afternoon, barely getting up to 50 across much of the valley, upper 40s in the Magic Valley, only mid 30s in the mountains. And then a weak cool front comes through late tomorrow. That will bring a cold wind back into the picture. Highs dip into just the upper 40s for our final weekend of October, with morning lows into the 20s starting on Saturday.
So that freeze warning usually brings an end to the growing season here in southern Idaho, but for some local producers, it was a pretty fruitful year, you should say. Sophia Bliss talked to some of these people that grow fruit, local producers and orchards, and what their seasons look like so far.
The consensus was that it was a pretty good season overall, and it added up to be pretty productive. So for Gem Orchards in Emmett, the owner and operator, Lance Phillips, says it was a great year. They grow cherries, nectarines, peaches, berries, apricots, and apples. And they even added some new varieties this year, all of which did well.
We thought we were going to have another 2022 where it was going to be a cold year. We were going to be way behind. Things started out wet and cool, and that was good as far as frost, because as soon as the trees finally bloomed, the weather went from, a possibility of frost to no frost, just like that. So everything that flowered, bloomed, and set fruit, which was great for cherries. We almost had too many cherries.
Phillips says after the cherries, the apricots, peaches, and nectarines came in through the summer, he adds the summer weather was more favorable than in recent years. He also says Gem Orchards didn't see any major weather events like a wind or hailstorm, but he says there was one hurdle he had to deal with this year.
The biggest thing that set us back was we had too many peaches. And when I say that, we're talking a limb that's 2 feet long had 90 peaches on it, and we have to literally pull off all but 3 of them. So we ended up thinning and then going back and thinning again. And then we actually had to thin 3 times. We had so many peaches, we were worried that we were going to be breaking limbs, and really top-notch fruiting season, at least out here in the Emmett area.
And Gem Orchards isn't the only local grower that had a great season this year.
I noticed my pickling cucumbers almost doubled in production. Our pumpkins exploded. They looked great. The apple crop was really, really good as far as volume. Our tomatoes, I can't see straight for all the tomatoes we got this year. So a lot of things have really, really, really done well. I'm grateful that we had so much better weather. A lot of people would ask me, why something was late. And I'd say, to be honest, it's not late. It's actually on time. And people are getting so accustomed to the changes that they expect things at different times than when they're normally supposed to be. We haven't had a frost yet, and it's running about 3 weeks late. Usually about the 3rd of October, we're finished, and all we have to do is deal with pumpkins. And this year, I'm still picking peppers, and I'm still picking tomatoes. I would say that the 29 days of over 100 degrees last year was absolute murder. Because not only was it stressing the plants, it was stressing us, it was stressing the insect community, it stressed all kinds of things.
As we mentioned, the growing season is coming to an end with this much cooler weather. Gem Orchards farm stand is closed for the season, but Lance Phillips says he still has cider if you want to coordinate with him to pick some up. And this will be Caballo Orchards last weekend, so you'll still be able to buy some of their organic produce. You can see both of those locations on your screen right now.
So I guess the season winding up, assume that means these growers get a break now? This is the time to kind of chill for them?
You would think literally chill, right? Gets colder and then now they have time off. But actually, they're both very busy right now. Lance said he gets about 3 weeks of downtime for the year, but then he's out every day pruning those trees. And Kathy had to plan our conversation in 20-minute increments because she was pressing apples.
Wow.
So very, very busy.
Work never ends for farmers. You know what else I look forward to with these freezing temperatures? Flies going away.
Oh, yeah. Goodbye.
I know. We'll be right back. Technology. Well, today we didn't have access to our text messages that you kindly send in every day to us. I apologize for that, but I did get an email from Phoebe, who had a question about the lawsuit with Lisa Sanchez. It didn't seem clear, so we know who the attorneys were for the Lisa lawsuit. It does seem like a lot of money. I don't have the top of my head, but I do know they went off-site outside the city to avoid any sort of conflict of interest. So possibly that's why fees went a little high. We'll try to do it again tomorrow.